2 million years ago, a terrified ape stared at a dancing orange beast that had just devoured its favorite tree. This was the moment the world shifted from cold darkness to the age of control. Before that flash of terror, life was binary. You lived in the light or you died in the dark. Our ancestors, the Homo erectus, were essentially glorified scavengers. They spent their days running from shadows and their nights shivering in the grip of the Pleistocene chill. They were at the bottom of the food chain, clinging to the edge of survival. Then came the fire. We often imagine a caveman hero rubbing two sticks together like a movie trope. It makes for a great story, but the reality is far more accidental. They didn't invent fire, they stole it. Lightning strikes. That was the original furnace of human evolution. A bolt hits a dry acacia tree. The wood catches, the savanna burns. For an animal that had only ever known raw protein and freezing nights, this was a sensory nightmare. But then the fire died down, and the smell changed. Something curious happened in the aftermath of those scorched clearings. Our ancestors found carcasses, but these weren't the bloody, tough, difficult-to-chew messes of the morning hunt. These animals were cooked. The heat had done the heavy lifting for their digestion. The protein was soft, the bacteria were dead. It was a caloric goldmine. This is where the great biological trade-off began. The human brain is a glutton. It accounts for only 2% of our body weight, but it burns 20% of our daily energy. To grow a brain that big, you need high-density fuel. Raw food takes hours to chew and even longer to process in the gut. By cooking meat, our ancestors outsourced the hardest part of digestion to the fire. Our jaws began to shrink. Our gut tracts became shorter and more efficient. That saved energy didn't just vanish, it was redirected upstairs to the gray matter. Fire literally grew our brains. But the shift wasn't just about calories, it was about the clock. For every other creature on Earth, the setting sun is a curfew. When the light goes, the predators come out. But with a captive flame, humans bought themselves extra time. They pushed the darkness back. They sat around the embers, faces illuminated, staring into the flickering glow. This is where language found its footing. With safety established, they stopped listening for predators and started listening to each other. They told stories. They planned the next day's hunt. They gossiped. They built the social architecture that defines us today. The campfire became the world's first classroom, meeting room, and living room. Archaeologists have found compelling evidence of this transition. At the Wonderwork cave in South Africa, researchers identified charred bone fragments and plant ash dating back roughly 1 million years. At the Gesher Benot Yaakov site in Israel, there is evidence of controlled hearths from 790,000 years ago. This wasn't just a flicker, this was a technological mastery. We started carrying the fire with us. We became the only species that brought a piece of the sun along for the migration. It allowed us to move out of the warm African cradle and into the frozen tundras of Europe and Asia. We didn't need fur to survive the ice. We just needed a flint, some dry tinder, and a little bit of patience. Yet this power came with a massive psychological cost. We became the masters of destruction. Once we learned to harness fire, we learned to manipulate the environment on a massive scale. We started clearing forests to create grazing land for prey. We changed the landscape of the planet before we even had written language. Some scientists call this the first step toward the Anthropocene, the era where human activity became the primary driver of Earth's climate and ecology. We didn't just inhabit the world anymore, we reshaped it. Think about your daily life. You turn a dial on a stove, you flip a light switch, you ignite the fuel in your car engine. Every single one of these actions is a direct descendant of that original, terrifying encounter with a lightning strike. We are still sitting around that campfire, keeping the darkness at bay, trying to stay warm while the world around us changes. But fire is a double-edged sword. It gave us the ability to build, to cook, to speak, and to think. It also gave us the power to incinerate. As our control over fire has grown, so has our reach. We've turned that primitive spark into a global network of heat and energy, but we have yet to decide if we are the fire's master or its eventual fuel. We survived the cold by turning the heat outward. We built civilizations on the back of combustion. But as the planet warms and the forests burn, we find ourselves back in the same position as that ancestor 2 million years ago. We are standing in the glow, holding a power we are still learning how to control. History didn't start with the wheel or the written word. It started with a bolt of lightning and a terrified ape who decided not to run away. The flame didn't just change what we ate, it changed who we were. Are we still the same scavengers, just huddled around a bigger, brighter fire? Or has the heat finally become too much to contain? The fire has been burning for 1 million years, and for the first time, we are starting to realize that it might eventually consume the very thing it helped create. The question isn't how we learn to tame the fire, it's whether we can ever learn to turn it off.